There are over 26 million homes in the UK. It's our most valuable possession and the one place where we should feel safe. So what happens when it comes under threat?
And it was a scene of utter devastation.
It was just carnage.
The whole floor was swarming.
When disaster strikes where you live, it can devastate your whole life.
The noise, the wind, it was terrifying.
Unstoppable.
It wasn't just ours, it was our home.
Coming up, a family's life devastated by a neighbour's building work.
We had no home, we had nothing. We had the clothes on our back.
A woman's home leaves her with fungus in her lungs.
I started coughing, it was blood clots, it was actually, I was coughing up.
And a couple plough their life savings into a botched extension.
We paid him £23,000, so panic was setting in. What has he done with that money?
In Woodford Green, GP Tasneem Ali's home was devastated when building work went wrong. But the work wasn't on her house, it was next door.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
18 months later, Tasneem is still waiting to move back into her wrecked house. Today, she's visiting the property with friend Steve to check on progress.
This is totally unacceptable.
Yeah, it is really.
And it's a shambles. After all the trouble that you've been put through no fault of your own, you should be moving back to a finished, completed, immaculate house.
I've been told through my loss assessor that actually, yeah, it's all going to be good. But having come here today, I'm in utter shock as well.
Revisiting her home brings back the painful memories of the day her house partially collapsed.
We were really lucky. If we had been just 5 minutes too late, we would have gone. We could have lost our lives.
When Taz first saw the house in 2008, she was looking to make a new start.
2008, I got divorced, and I had lived with my daughter. But you know, when you live in a flat, it's not the same. So she was growing up, and we needed space, and we needed a garden and to put down some roots. So I actually started looking in the area, and my sister lives locally as well. So I thought, perfect, Woodford Green, great area. The upstairs bathroom I've been through enough.
The 4-bedroom semi-detached house had been extended and fitted Tasneem's requirements perfectly.
And the minute I walked in, I absolutely loved it because it was a family home. And it had a really warm, happy feeling, just, you know, beautiful. And immediately I fell in love with it. And the next day I made him an offer on the spot and he accepted.
In July 2009, Taz and her 9-year-old daughter Samira moved in.
And I felt blessed, and it had all my sentimental things in there. It was my palace.
Taz lived happily in her new home. And in January 2014, her parents moved from South Africa to join her. Around the same time, her neighbours approached her to discuss a proposed extension to their house.
They showed me their plans, actually. I had no objections, but I realised they were going to abut onto my party wall, which was my garage extension. And I kind of said, oh, that's coming up to the party wall. We'll have to follow the Party Wall Act.
The Party Wall Act covers any building work that involves shared walls or is near to neighbouring buildings and is meant to help avoid disputes between neighbours. Anyone proposing work covered by the Act must give notice to his or her neighbours.
He kind of said, look, we were hoping we could just dispense with that and have a gentleman's agreement and have an understanding that if there's any damage or whatever, we'd sort it out.
But Tasneem says she didn't agree and asked for a surveyor to oversee the party wall agreement.
And I got the feeling, you know, they were asking me, let's not do it to save some money. And I said, no, I'm really sorry, but, you know, let's do it the proper way so that there aren't any problems later on.
So Taz appointed a party wall surveyor. 4 months later, in May 2014, Taz had received no confirmation from the surveyors confirming agreement with her neighbours.
Hello? Oh, hi, Paul.
So she was surprised to see work starting on her neighbour's extension.
Builders appeared on site, And it did sort of trigger the thought that, hang on, I haven't received any surveys or anything, and I haven't really been informed properly that this is happening, so I need to be talking to the neighbours about this.
When Tasneem spoke to her appointed surveyor, he told her they'd sent 3 letters to the neighbour's builder about the party wall agreement, but had received no response.
As far as I understand it, if I've invoked the Party Wall Act, the person who's building, the neighbour, cannot commence work until the survey is done and due processes is sort of followed.
Taz's neighbours say that a party wall agreement was signed by Taz, and that is why the work was able to commence. Then on the afternoon of May the 20th, 2014, Taz and her daughter made a shocking discovery.
So we got home that day and I said to Samira, upstairs, have a quick shower while I go get some dinner. So I went off into the kitchen and the next thing I heard is her screaming, "Mum, come, there's a crack." So I rushed into the bathroom and Samira was here and she pointed cracks on this wall, and they weren't huge cracks, they were actually, you know, just tiny, but still I thought, oh gosh, that's cracked. In all my days living in this house, not a single crack in this bathroom. Then it tweaked that, oh, they're doing building work next door, let me go and look at my extension because that's adjoining them. So I rushed from the bathroom into this room and I was absolutely aghast at what I saw. Every wall in this extension had huge cracks, holes that big so you could kind of see the brickwork and like the powder and the dust through it. It was like the walls were parting. My dad said, let's go and talk to the neighbour next door and tell them what's going on. My dad and I went outside to go and talk to the neighbour, and she in fact came back with me into the property to look at the cracks. Then we went into her property to inspect it from her side. We were gobsmacked. It was a huge trench going across the whole width of my property. And when you looked at it, you could see my foundation. They just literally dug a wide, deep trench, you know, without any proper support to my property.
The neighbour called the builder, and Tasneem got her friend Steve, a retired engineer, to look at the trench and the cracks in Tasneem's extension.
I've looked up and there's some severe cracks on the outside. I thought, that doesn't look right at all. But at that stage I thought, well, let's walk up the drive, let's have a look what's going on here. So we walked over to the corner here, which obviously was the footings that they'd been digging out, and as you can see, it's gone right to the back of the garden. And I thought to myself, my good God, who's dug that trench? And the trench was actually under Taz's foundations, which you think, no one does that. That's the improper way to build.
Yeah.
I met her dad on the driveway, stood at the front of the trench, and I thought, something not right here, something looks like it's moved.
Steve went into the hole because he wanted to check, where does this go? How deep is this? That looks really big. And then we started hearing a rumbling sound. And Steve's wife said, get out, it's, you know, it's coming down.
So I literally stepped out the hole, run up the driveway, and you could hear the roar and rumble of the extension collapsing. I've looked around and the side of the houses is gone.
Tasneem's garage extension had partially collapsed into the trench dug by her neighbour's builders.
And then we heard screaming. It was my daughter and my mum, and they were stuck inside.
I was on the landing. Then it struck me, look, the front door is closed and we're stuck in here. So I took her into my bedroom, closed that door, thinking that maybe I would go out of the back window onto the neighbour's parapet there.
My dad, he ran to the front door and he put his foot there and he screamed, you know, come down.
When the fire brigade arrived, they immediately stopped anyone going into the house.
I thought, am I at the movies? This is my house. It was like, is this a horror film?
A building inspector also arrived. They should have been called out when the work first started, but they hadn't been. And when they assessed the site now, they established that the trench was contrary to safe working practice and had led to the collapse. Worse still, the inspector declared the house unsafe to live in.
He allowed us just 5 minutes to get in there and grab what we could, because he deemed it an unsafe structure. So we had to go in with firemen as escorts, and just grab what we could.
The neighbour's builder disagrees with the building inspector's assessment, instead claiming the collapse of Tasneem's garden extension was due to insufficient foundations underneath it and not to do with any work he had carried out.
We had nothing. We had the clothes on our back, literally. And we had no home, we had nothing. And I remember neighbours offering me cutlery and bedding and saying, oh, we've got this, we've got that. Very, very difficult time,
Little did Taz know that it would be months before repairs could begin on her house and years until she could move back in. The village of Much Hoole near Preston was the childhood home of Katie Wakeling. And it was here she and her husband Guy wanted to buy a house and raise their family.
This particular house was perfect.
As soon as we walked in,
Yeah, we knew.
we knew it was the one.
New.
Pregnant with their second son, Katie couldn't wait to move in.
When we moved in, we had everything we wanted. It was just like a perfect home to what. It was clean and tidy.
Everything about it was
Yeah.
great.
But the family's plans for the future soon came crashing down,
It was horrendous and it was dangerous.
risking all their lives.
The roof could have fallen down on my little girl's head.
Katie and Guy bought their two-bedroom bungalow in July 2013. But with a baby on the way, they needed more space and decided to have a loft extension.
We got an architect round. He had a look up there and he said you can easily get 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. So we thought, well, we're silly not to do that.
Let's go for it.
Yeah, it's our forever home,
Why not?
so make the most of it. In our eyes, it was completely worth it. We were going to have this extension of our dreams.
The couple saved hard for almost 2 years to pay for their extension. And in April 2015, after getting 9 quotes, they chose a builder who had priced the job at £23,500.
This said builder wasn't the cheapest, but he came round and explained he could start near enough straight away within 2 or 3 weeks, which is what we wanted.
He seemed just like any other builder.
He presented us with contracts to sign, which you wouldn't, you'd expect a professional builder to do, which we signed.
Breakdown of the actual work that was going to take place. He just made us feel at ease.
A month later in June, building on their loft extension began.
The builder said, and he also put it in the contract, to be 4 to 6 weeks. When it first started, it looked to be going great. He was straight on it, the scaffolding was up, his labourers were around, they were pulling everything out the roof that they were meant to do. We had no concerns at all.
But a few days later, they were faced with a huge problem.
The first job that they did was to take the roof off. Unfortunately, that weekend there was a massive storm. They only put, what wasn't even tarpaulin over, so it blew off.
So all the rain built up on the bedroom ceiling.
Collapsed.
Wallop. Came all down all over our beds, which all have had to be thrown away.
The couple spoke to their builder.
And the worrying thing was, when the ceiling was bowing, the builder was still saying to me, it's fine, it'll dry out, don't worry. 3 hours later, after we actually said that, it came down. It should have been a warning sign, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt. He did say he would pay for all the damage.
The builder didn't pay for the damage, but for the Wakelings, this was just the start of their problems.
We paid him £23,000. What has he done with that money?
Three years ago, Rachel Martin and her disabled son Craig were living in a homeless unit, but desperate to find a home of their own.
When I was staying in the hostel, it wasn't nice because it wasn't my own house, it wasn't my own furniture, my own beds. It just felt really terrible.
Then in August 2013, North Lanarkshire Council offered Rachel and Craig a 2-bedroom ground floor flat in Airdrie.
I felt really good. I was really up in cloud 9 because I was getting somewhere that we could settle and enjoy ourselves, enjoy our lives. Finding this place was the start of a new chapter in our lives. because it was a house for me and Craig and nobody else, and that we could call home. So getting this house was a big, big thing for us.
When Craig was born 19 years ago with serious health issues, Rachel gave up her job as a shop assistant to become a full-time carer.
Craig's so poorly, he's been waiting for a heart and lung transplant and a kidney transplant. Because obviously I've got to be there for him, checking on him through the nights. I've had him when he has stopped breathing. I've had to resuscitate him back to life again.
Rachel was determined to transform their council flat into the perfect home for Craig.
The house was a mess, but I could look back at that and see what I could make it into. It took me a good maybe 6 to 12 months to get the house up to the standard that we wanted for it, to make it our home. I was very proud of my house. Me and Craig was very happy with it.
But in December 2014, after 16 happy months in their new home, Rachel noticed the walls in her bathroom were wet.
The ceilings were black and brown and horrible and very, very smelly.
A few days later, fungus and mould started to appear on the bathroom ceiling.
Didn't want to touch them because didn't know what they would do, but we still had to take baths. And sometimes when you were in the bath, you would actually find one that would have fallen off the wall. So you were jumping out of the bath, emptying the water, getting bags to pick these mushrooms up with your hand through the bag so you weren't touching them.
What Rachel didn't know was that spores from some forms of mould can cause serious health issues if they're inhaled. In January 2015, Rachel called the council and they arranged to send someone round to clean up the fungus. But the cause of the damp was unclear and the mould returned. Over the next couple of weeks, more and more fungus appeared in the bathroom, while the council investigated to try and find the cause of the damp.
I was so exhausted trying to catch my breath. I was clammy and I just felt as if I was going to collapse on the floor. That's how bad I actually became. I did go outside, I felt a little bit better in the clean air. But when I came back into the house, my health just went back down.
Craig's health was unaffected, but Rachel continued to deteriorate whilst the mould and fungus multiplied.
They were very, very quick growing, and we did have 25 mushrooms at one point growing along the wall and the ceiling and around the window. And there was like white spores growing around them. Then the whiteness would come off.
Over the next 4 weeks, Rachel began finding even the most basic tasks impossible.
Trying to bath Craig was a nightmare. I did have somebody actually come in to help me to do it because I couldn't do it. And that's my job to do that for him because I'm his mum. And it made me so sick that I couldn't look after my son at the time.
In March 2015, 2 months after the fungus first appeared, Rachel's condition became critical.
When I started coughing, it was blood clots. It was actually I was coughing up. And I sat on the couch one night and the blood clots were constantly coming up. So someone called an ambulance for me.
Rachel spent a week in hospital and was horrified to learn that she had dry blood clots in her lungs. An MRI scan showed that fungal spores that could have come from mould and fungus in her bathroom were now growing in her lungs.
When I was told that the dampness and that was causing my health illnesses, I was really taken back because I was scared. Because I was so ill, I didn't know if I was going to survive. And if I didn't, it was who was going to look after my son. Because I'm his main carer, and if I couldn't look after him, nobody looks after him the way Mum do.
In April 2015, the council carried out a full rotwork survey and found the mould was the result of a leaking shower in the flat upstairs.
The roof had to come out, the flooring in the bathroom had to come up, the main beams in the bathroom floor had to come up. When they started the work, I was overjoyed because I was actually starting to see an end to a nightmare.
In August 2015, the council finished the work to repair Rachel's home, which included clearing all the mould and fungus that had been growing in the flat. Since then, they haven't returned. Rachel's health has drastically improved, and she's able to enjoy living in her home with Craig again. In Woodford Green, Essex, Tasneem Ali's home was nearly destroyed after builders working on an extension next door undermined the foundations of her house, causing it to collapse.
I thought, am I at the movies? This is my house. Is this a horror film?
The house was declared unsafe by the building inspector, and Taz and her family were forced to move out.
The next morning, I knew I had to sort of get the wheels in motion. I made a list of, yes, got to phone the insurance, got to phone the car insurance, and also we needed a place to stay because I'm thinking, gosh, we haven't got a home, you know. So the insurer said, well, find a hotel close to you.
Tasneem and her family booked into a hotel nearby, where they stayed for the next 2.5 weeks.
Living in a hotel was I think very low time, the lowest point for us at that time, with bin bags, and because we had nothing, and having to buy everything, not even underwear and stuff, silly things, toothbrushes, and we take for granted, really.
Being forced out of their home had a huge impact on Tasneem's 15-year-old daughter, Samira.
She was actually terrified to be alone, from the first night. She would be stuck to me like glue and afraid. And before she went into a room, she started looking for cracks.
The family moved into a rental house while they waited for their home to be repaired. But it took 3 months just to make the house safe for any repairs to start.
According to the loss adjuster, they couldn't agree the correct way to make safe the property because there was a risk of the house falling. But because they took 13 weeks to actually put up scaffolding and make safe the house, the part of the house that was good and undamaged was exposed to the elements and was getting damaged.
The stress of the situation has had an impact on Tasneem's health.
I've had near to a nervous breakdown. Thank God for Prozac, and thank God for the support of my friends. And I've had to hold it together because I'm here being the strong one for my parents. It's just been incredibly stressful, and you know what? I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy.
At least this is, I think, the main one. We've got all the pictures.
It's got quite a few pictures.
7 months after the collapse, Tasneem was shocked to find out that the rebuilding of her home couldn't start. The necessary planning permission hadn't been applied for by the contractors managing the rebuild for the insurance company.
They had wasted 7 months, to my mind. Surely, whilst you're making it safe, you could still, in tandem, apply for planning permission to expedite things.
In January 2015, planning permission for rebuild work was granted. By this point, Tasneem had decided to appoint her own loss adjuster.
And perhaps I should have done that earlier. I'd given my insurance company an adequate chance to sort this out, and nothing much had happened.
Finally, work began on rebuilding the property in October 2015, 18 months after a section of her house had collapsed.
A lot had to be done to fix the house, the rebuild of the collapsed structure, and then effectively refurbishment of the whole house.
In Much Hoole near Preston, Katie and Guy had paid for a roof extension to their bungalow.
We were going to have this extension of our dreams.
But within days of work starting, the roof was left exposed and a buildup of rainwater caused a bedroom ceiling to collapse.
Should have been a warning sign, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt.
The building work continued. The job should have taken 4 to 6 weeks, but Katie and Guy became worried when a week before the work was due to end, they suddenly couldn't contact their builder and the roof extension was far from finished.
And then we got a text message to say that he'd been in hospital, he'd hurt his back, and he was on quite strong painkillers, so that's why he'd not been in touch.
Contact from the builder was limited and usually through text. There were also rumours that labourers hadn't been paid and were walking off the job.
That's also a huge concern, because what has he done with our money? At this point, we paid him £23,000, so panic was setting in. We needed to do something quickly.
Guy visited the builder at his house.
I went round and told him, you've had £23,000 of mine. I need £10,000 in 2 weeks so I can get my house back up and running.
6 weeks later, Guy received a visit from the police.
Police officer came round and said there's been threats against the builder. And I said, it's nothing to do with me. He said, well, if it is to do with you, stop it now.
I mean, we've asked for our money back, but not in a threatening manner.
Guy and Katie desperately wanted their extension finished and asked local tradesmen to look at completing the job. But when they examined the work so far, they told the couple there were serious problems.
After we got the local builders to have a look at the job that they'd done, they said you really need to get building control in, a building inspector, to look at the work.
And it was only when we contacted them ourselves we discovered they'd never ever been contacted from day one.
A building inspector is supposed to visit a site to check all work being done complies with building regulations. Katie and Guy called an independent inspector in for their dormer. He told them the work was substandard and illegal.
The insulation, for example, the inspector said he hasn't seen anything like that for 40 years. When it's like this, all it will do is cause dampness, because there's no air can get between. We'll go through here, there's lots more to see.
This is what is supposed to be a little girl's room.
This actual support, when you look right down, all it is sat on is a block of wood. So that block of wood down there is supporting the total weight of the house.
The roof could have fallen down on my little girl's head. It's absolutely infuriating.
And just behind here, where you can see the pipes running, there should be at least 3 supporting joists, when in fact there's only half a joist there. The stairs didn't go off the plans yet again.
No, they're a completely different shape to what the plans were.
Just here, where the radiator pipes were sent down, they should be no more than an inch cut away. We've got half a course of breeze block left and then you're through to outside.
Even rooms that weren't having work done had been severely damaged.
All I can see when I walk in is this mess. It's going to take so long to clear up. We're going to have to get the floor replaced, just decorate it all, just because he couldn't be bothered putting something down on the floor.
I'm quite worried because I don't know what we can do with the property, if anything.
We just haven't got a clue. It's hard to be optimistic when you've been living like this for weeks and weeks, well, months and months.
Having been left with an unfinished and uncompliant loft extension, Katie and Guy wanted to sue their builder.
We have taken initial legal advice. Because he's a limited company, he doesn't appear to have any assets. So legally we can't do a lot at the minute.
With their home unsafe, the family were now living with Katie's parents.
It just means that the 4 adults, 2 children and a dog, squashed in a 3-bedroom semi. So at the minute I'm in a double bed with our son. My husband is in the box room in a single bed and our daughter's in the cot.
To get their house back on track, Katie and Guy were going to have to make some tough decisions. In May 2014, Tasneem Ali was forced to move out of her home in Woodford Green when building work next door undermined the foundations of her house, causing part of it to collapse.
When you looked at it, you could see my foundation, and they just literally dug a wide, deep trench without any proper support to my property.
Sorting the insurance claim, making her house safe, and getting planning permission to rebuild has meant it's taken 18 months repairs to even begin.
A lot had to be done to fix the house, the rebuild of the collapsed structure, and then effectively refurbishment of the whole house.
In January 2016, the insurers for Tasneem's neighbours admitted liability. The cost to repair Tasneem's home is estimated to be £200,000. Today, with her friend Steve, Tasneem is visiting her home for the first time since the repair work began.
Oh my God, this is the first time I've actually been in. They've rebuilt this. It's a room. It's a room, it's not rubble. So this is my kitchen. Oh my God, it's just totally different. It's still a building site, but it's not rubble. I'm almost choking up here. We've been through such a lot, and this is quite emotional, really.
Throughout the house, there are reminders of when the family lived there.
And I see, this is my dad's hat, and it was just lying on the floor. If you look, there's like bedding from my mum's bedroom, just thrown like a pile of junk. When you come in here and look at that, it's really quite hard. This is part of our home and part of our personal possessions. My dad wore this hat every day. It makes me sad when I see it.
Tasneem has been told she and her family will be able to move back into their home by February 2016. But having seen the house, she's worried it may be longer.
But I'm looking at this, and it's still a building site. And, you know, I don't know, the conservatory's not done. It's just a mess, isn't it?
After all the trouble that you've been put through no fault of your own, you should be moving back to a finished, completed, immaculate house.
I've been told through my loss assessor that actually, yeah, it's all going to be good. But having come here today, I'm in utter shock as well, because I would like to move in when it's all done. I refuse to move in until my fences are up and my garden's cleared and conservatory's finished, the paving's done.
When Tasneem does finally move back into a fully repaired home after over 18 months away, there will still be a constant reminder of the collapse. Her neighbours have continued with their extension, although the builder who caused the collapse is no longer doing the work.
I think our relationship is cordial and civil. I wouldn't say we're over-friendly. There will be a claim made by me for uninsured losses. That's the natural progression of this, because obviously if the insurance company doesn't honour everything, then it's not fair that I sustain these losses. They were badly advised. You know, they made an unwise choice, and I hope they've learned their lesson.
Natural disasters can wreak havoc on our homes, and sometimes we're powerless to protect against them. In 2011, Tracy and John Davis bought a house close to their son and grandchildren in Penpeta Hale, South Wales.
We bought the house as a project. Everything was ripped out of the house. There was a lot of love that went into it, I can tell you.
Their priority was to create an ensuite bedroom in the loft for their youngest daughter, Christia, who still lived at home.
It's pretty much like a little flat. I had built-in wardrobes and things, built-in cupboards. It was very quiet, so it's good for me to study and things up there and get my work done for university.
The renovations took 3 years, but just a few months after their home was finished, the unthinkable happened.
It was a Friday evening. I was here with my grandchildren. My daughter came in about 4:05.
My niece followed me upstairs. I normally stay in my bedroom and do work or watch TV or something.
Tracy's granddaughter Lacey and Christia decided to join the rest of the family downstairs. They had just entered the living room when they heard a loud crash.
There was, well, this horrendous noise. It was that loud. It sounded more of a bomb going off.
Our telly exploded, so it was just like a massive flash.
The door just flew open.
I remember seeing the passage ceiling all falling down. I thought the electrics exploded.
Lacey was absolutely uncontrollable. We couldn't do a thing with her. She's screaming and screaming. Somebody then hammered on the window and said, "You better get out because the house is on fire." We all shot out through the front. I had no shoes on my feet. We just ran out in, well, fear really, because we didn't know what had gone on.
From the street, Christia was shocked by what she saw.
You could see that the whole roof was on fire. It was just like a massive blaze. We just stood outside just watching everything that I owned just burn.
In June 2015, Katie and Guy invested all their savings into a dormer extension on their bungalow.
3 bedrooms and a bathroom. It's our forever home, so make the most of it.
With a week of work left, their builder disappeared, later claiming to have a bad back. Advised to call a building inspector, the existing work was found to be substandard and, in parts, illegal.
Then we look at the dormer itself from the outside.
The cladding it's on isn't allowed on these buildings. It's not even made for dormers. We actually paid extra for that. Windows are not fire safety, so if there's a fire, my children couldn't have got out of there.
The guttering doesn't reach the edge. The roof's actually flapping up. It's literally every single thing that he's done in here has been wrong.
Guy and Katie were unable to sue the builder's company as he had gone into liquidation, and the family of 4 were now living with Katie's parents as their home was unsafe.
All of our money's gone, and we're stuck here in limbo with no way of knowing which way to go with the project.
The couple went back to their surveyor for advice.
There's a lot here that isn't right. So structurally, it isn't safe at the moment, you know. There is a lot of work involved in. Put a well-built staircase as it was designed to go in, structurally upgrade the dormer, check the floors, upgrade them as necessary. The main thing is get it insulated properly, get the external cladding done properly. So I really need to know, to proceed, which option you're going to go down, really. Is it the rebuild or the salvage, which I think is going to be dependent on cost and time, really.
Katie and Guy had to decide between the cheaper option of salvaging what they could or rebuilding from scratch, which would cost tens of thousands more.
I think we'll go for the salvage option.
We're not made of money.
Well, we haven't got any other option, have we?
No.
So,
time-wise, it's the quickest one as well.
But obviously the inspector's going to be around here all the time to make sure it's safe.
Yeah. So if I arrange to get the structural engineer down in the next day or so, we can go through the alterations.
Yep.
Although it looks like a shell at the moment, you know, with the structural upgrade of the timbers, the insulation in the plasterboard, you're back to having your room, you know, ready to paint and put your carpet down.
We can finally get things moving after how long have we been waiting? Just stuck like this for weeks and weeks and weeks, wondering if we're ever going to be able to get anything done. We'll finally get to the stage where we think, right, you know,
4 to 6 weeks we could be back in
Well,
here.
yeah.
You know, it gives us a lot of hope.
Because he had no assets, legal proceedings were never taken against the builder. The couple's local community rallied to donate materials, and 5 months after the original work should have finished, Guy and Katie are beginning to rebuild their home.
One of the local building merchants have come with probably about half of the materials we need to rebuild the actual dormer. I'm blown away by the generosity. The local community just all coming together and putting a wrong right. Unbelievable. This year's going to be a better year than last year.
Yeah.
It's going to be.
So it's our year.
We'll make it our year.
Yeah.
In Pen Petr Hale, South Wales, Tracy Davis fled her home with 19-year-old daughter Christia and grandkids after they heard a bomb-like noise and their house burst into flames.
We didn't have a clue what was going on. We had no idea what has happened. We was just panic and run.
The fire was so fierce that the loft room Christia had left only minutes before the explosion was now a burning shell.
We just stood outside just watching everything that I owned just burn.
Neighbour Alison Jarrett, who lives across the street, witnessed the whole thing.
I
looked out of the window and I thought, what's that funny light in the sky?
You could see this light, which reminded me of looking at the sun through a haze. Within a few minutes, it seemed to be getting bigger. The air moved like a shimmer. And then, boom, Basie's roof just went up in flames.
Really did not think that a house had been hit by lightning. That's the last thing we'd think. It is like 1 in a million chances that it's actually going to happen to anyone.
It took the fire brigade around 3 hours to control the blaze. Tracy and Christia stayed the night with family who lived nearby. The next day, they went back to inspect the damage.
We came upstairs and my whole stairs had gone. The bit at the top of the stairs was still here in the bottom, but in the middle it completely burnt. There was literally absolutely nothing left here at all. There was springs left from my bed. It was just ash, basically. Everything had gone.
They had been lucky to escape unharmed.
As soon as the lightning hit the roof, everything was just completely gone. If I didn't go downstairs, obviously I wouldn't be here today.
The insurance company provided accommodation for the family while the house was rebuilt.
You know, your emotions are everywhere. Now, are you going to move back in, or do you think you'll be able to live in that house again?
In September 2014, 9 months after the lightning strike had devastated their home, repairs were completed and the Davis family were finally able to move back in.
Well, the house now is all back as pretty much as it was before the fire. As a family unit, we did pull together, didn't we?
But the night that an uncontrollable act of nature almost claimed their lives will never leave the family.
1 in a million chances that it's actually going to happen to anyone. To have such a major thing happen to you and survive it all as well. You never think that anything like that is going to happen ever, until it actually does happen to you.
We approached the building company who carried out the work on the Wakeling's loft extension to ask them about the project. They say that the company has now ceased trade-in, but that they made every attempt to rectify the issues and apologise for the distress the matter has caused.